Over the past 4 to 5 years, our firm has prepared an increasing amount of prenuptial agreements for our clients. The first question that everyone asks regarding the prenuptial agreements is whether they are in fact enforceable in the state of Georgia. And the answer to that question is that yes, generally prenuptial agreements are enforceable in the state of Georgia. Now, the issue that the court will ask is basically revolves around three main questions as to the enforceability of a prenuptial agreement. The first question that the court will ask is whether the agreement was entered under fraud, duress, and that issue generally revolves around the fact that there needs to be a full financial disclosure by both parties. Such a financial disclosure will be found attached to the prenuptial agreement and generally will include all of that person's assets and liabilities with their respective amount. The second issue revolves around whether an agreement is considered unconscionable. Whether an agreement is considered unconscionable really is a question, obviously, of law. And pursuant to applicable law, unconscionability is generally defined as an agreement that is so unfair that no reasonable person would sign. Obviously, this is a very hard standard to prove. So it will be extremely hard for someone to show that an agreement is unconscionable. The third factor that the court will consider is whether the facts and circumstances have changed since the time of the execution of the prenuptial agreement so as to render that prenuptial agreement unfair under the applicable circumstances. The main issue that the court will look at to determine this is whether these changes were foreseeable at the time that the prenuptial agreement was executed. Generally, issues such as children being born as issued of the marriage, a greater disparity in the income and assets of the parties, all these issues have been determined to have been foreseeable in the case law that is out there concerning the prenuptial agreement. In short, prenuptial agreements will be enforceable in Georgia unless there has been a clear violation of any of these three questions. When people are considering also prenuptial agreements, there may not be sufficient amount of time to get the agreement done prior to the wedding. So for these individuals, they will consider what's called a postnuptial agreement, which generally is the same as a prenuptial agreement, with the main difference that the agreement is actually signed after the date of the marriage rather than before the marriage. And generally, postnuptial agreements are governed by the same principles as to the enforceability of prenuptial agreements. And again, if someone is trying to protect their assets either before or during the marriage, they should consider entering into a prenuptial or postnuptial agreement.